Hey guys! I'm Emma Johnson, I'm 30 years old, and today I'm bringing you a story that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. A girl's family boycotts her wedding because they think her husband is a broke loser. But plot twist, he's actually worth $3.2 billion. The revenge that follows? Absolutely chef's kiss. So buckle up and don't forget to hit that like button. Picture this, you're standing in your wedding dress, tears streaming down your face, staring at an almost empty venue. Your own family, your parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, they're all at home, probably laughing about how you're marrying some unemployed loser who can't even afford a decent suit. But here's the thing they didn't know, that unemployed loser they mocked? He's worth $3.2 billion. And they're about to find out in the most spectacular way possible. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or had your family turn their backs on you when you needed them most, this story is going to hit you right in the feels. We're talking about the kind of justice that makes you want to stand up and cheer. So hit that like button if you're ready for some serious satisfaction, subscribe for more incredible stories, and buckle up, because what you're about to hear will restore your faith in karma. Let me introduce you to Emma Johnson, that's me, by the way. 28 years old, working as a freelance graphic designer, living in a modest apartment in Portland. Now, to understand this story, you need to know about my family dynamics, because they're complicated. My parents, David and Linda Chen, are what you'd call old money adjacent. They're not billionaires, but they're comfortable. Dad owns 3 successful restaurants, Mom runs a boutique marketing firm. They live in this pristine house in the hills, drive matching BMWs, and have very specific ideas about success, status, and who their children should associate with. Then there's my older brother Marcus. Marcus is their golden child, Harvard MBA, works at Goldman Sachs, married to a lawyer named Stephanie who comes from good family. They live in a penthouse downtown, take European vacations, and post Instagram photos that look like they're auditioning for Architectural Digest. And then there's me. The family disappointment. See, I didn't follow the prescribed path. I studied art instead of business. I chose creativity over corporate climbing. I rent instead of own. I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic that makes weird noises when it rains. And worst of all, in my family's eyes, I fell in love with someone who didn't fit their picture of success. Enter Daniel Rodriguez. I met Daniel 2 years ago at a coffee shop in the Arts District. He was sitting alone, sketching in a worn notebook, wearing jeans with actual holes in them, not the designer kind, and a faded t-shirt. His sneakers were held together with duct tape. His hair was a little too long, curling at the edges. He looked like he hadn't seen the inside of a corporate office in his entire life. He was perfect. We started talking about art, about books, about dreams and fears and all those deep conversations you have when you meet someone whose soul seems to recognize yours. Daniel told me he was between jobs, which, in hindsight, was the understatement of the century. He said he was exploring his options, taking time to figure out what he really wanted to do with his life. My family? They hated him from day one. The first time I brought Daniel to Sunday dinner, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mom kept asking pointed questions about his career prospects. My dad grilled him about his 5-year plan. Marcus actually asked him, and I'm not making this up, if he had considered learning a trade because not everyone is cut out for professional success. Daniel handled it with grace. He answered their questions politely, complimented my mom's cooking, and tried to engage them in genuine conversation. But I could see it in their eyes, they'd already written him off. After Daniel left that night, the family intervention began. Emma, honey, my mom said, using that condescending tone that always made my skin crawl, don't you think you deserve someone more established? What she means, Dad added, is that love doesn't pay the bills. This Daniel seems nice enough, but what kind of future can he offer you? Marcus was less diplomatic. Emma, come on. The guy showed up to dinner in sneakers. Sneakers. To our house. And did you see his car? I'm pretty sure it's held together with prayer and good intentions. For 18 months, I endured this. Every family gathering became a referendum on my relationship. Every phone call included subtle, and not so subtle, hints about how I was settling and how I could do so much better. But here's the thing about Daniel that my family never bothered to discover: he was kind. He was brilliant. He made me laugh until my sides hurt. He supported my art, encouraged my dreams, and loved me in a way that made me feel like I could conquer the world. And when he proposed, with a simple ring he'd saved up for months to buy, I said yes without hesitation. That's when things got really ugly. The morning after Daniel proposed, I called my parents, practically vibrating with excitement. Mom. Dad. I have the most amazing news: Daniel proposed. We're engaged. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Finally, my mother spoke. Oh, Emma. Are you sure about this? Am I sure? Mom, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It's just, have you really thought this through? Marriage is a big step, and finances are so important in a relationship. How will you two support yourselves? What about children? What about buying a house? I felt my excitement deflating like a punctured balloon. We'll figure it out, Mom. People do it every day. We love each other. Love doesn't pay for groceries, sweetheart. The conversation went downhill from there. By the time I hung up, I was crying. Daniel found me on our couch, tears streaming down my face. What happened? He asked, immediately wrapping me in his arms. They're not happy about the engagement. Something flickered across Daniel's face, pain, maybe, or anger. But he just held me tighter. I'm sorry, Emma. I know how much your family means to you. You mean more, I said fiercely. You mean everything. We decided to have a small wedding. Intimate. Just close friends and family. We found a beautiful venue, a restored historic mansion with gardens that looked like something out of a fairy tale. It wasn't cheap, but we'd saved up, and Daniel insisted on paying for most of it, though he never explained how he could afford it on his non-existent income. I sent out the invitations with such hope. This would be our chance to bring everyone together. Once my family saw how happy Daniel made me, once they witnessed our love firsthand, surely they'd come around. I should have known better. The first RSVP came back marked unable to attend. It was from my Aunt Patricia. Then Uncle Jim. Prior commitment. Then my cousin Rachel. Travel conflict. One by one, my family members found excuses. Sudden business trips. Previously scheduled obligations. Health issues that seemed suspiciously well-timed. But it was Marcus who delivered the final blow. He called me 3 weeks before the wedding. Emma, I need to be straight with you. Okay, I said, though I could already feel my heart sinking. None of us are coming to the wedding. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, none of you? Mom, Dad, me, Stephanie, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. We talked about it, and we all agree, we can't, in good conscience, celebrate what we see as a mistake. A mistake? My voice was barely a whisper. Emma, this guy is going to drag you down. You're smart, you're talented, you deserve someone who can provide for you. Someone with ambition. Someone with a future. This Daniel guy, he's dead weight. He's the man I love. Love isn't enough. Marcus's voice rose. Do you know what it's like for us, watching you throw your life away? Do you know how embarrassing it is when our friends ask about your boyfriend and we have to explain that he's unemployed? That he doesn't even have a plan? He's exploring his options. He's a loser, Emma. And if you marry him, you'll be a loser too. We won't be part of it. We won't watch you destroy yourself. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like my entire world had collapsed. Daniel found me like that 20 minutes later, still standing in the same spot, staring at nothing. Emma? What's wrong? When I explained that my entire family had boycotted our wedding, I watched something change in his eyes. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, I saw something else. Something harder. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. This is my fault. No, it's not, it is. They're doing this because of me. Because of who they think I am. I don't care what they think. We don't need them. But even as I said it, I was breaking inside. These were the people who'd raised me, who'd celebrated every birthday and graduation. And now, on the most important day of my life, I'd be walking down the aisle to empty chairs where they should have been sitting. Our wedding day dawned bright and beautiful. The kind of perfect September morning that makes you believe in magic. The historic mansion glowed in the golden light, and the gardens were bursting with late summer flowers. I should have been the happiest woman alive. Instead, I stood in the bridal suite, staring at my reflection in an antique mirror, trying not to let my tears ruin my makeup. My maid of honor, Jessica, my best friend since college, was doing her best to keep my spirits up. You look absolutely stunning, she said, adjusting my veil. Daniel's going to lose his mind when he sees you. Half the chairs are going to be empty, Jess. So what? The people who matter are here. The people who love you and want to see you happy. She was right, of course. Daniel's friends had become my friends over the past 2 years. They were artists and writers and musicians and free spirits who'd embraced me from day one. They were sitting in those chairs right now, ready to celebrate with us. But it wasn't the same. There's something about your family's absence that echoes, even in a room full of love. Daniel's side of the venue was packed, by the way. And that should have been my first clue that there was more to his story than I knew. See, Daniel had told me his family lived far away and couldn't make it to the wedding. But his friends who were there, let me paint you a picture. There was an older gentleman in an impeccably tailored suit who carried himself like royalty. A woman whose jewelry probably cost more than my car. A group of younger people who had that indefinable air of wealth, not flashy, but unmistakably expensive in their understated elegance. I was too heartbroken about my own family to think much about it at the time. The ceremony was beautiful despite everything. Daniel looked incredible in his simple black suit, not designer, just a regular suit, but he wore it like armor made of starlight. When I walked down the aisle and saw his face, saw the way his eyes lit up and filled with tears, I remembered why I was doing this. I was marrying my person. My heart. My future. The vows we'd written were personal and funny and heartbreaking. When Daniel promised to love me whether we're eating ramen in a studio apartment or champagne in a palace, his friends laughed like it was some kind of inside joke. When we kissed, when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers from Daniel's side of the venue were so enthusiastic they almost made up for the silence from mine. Almost. The reception was in full swing when I stepped outside for some air. I needed a moment to process everything, the joy of marrying Daniel mixed with the grief of my family's absence. That's when I heard the voices. Marcus, my brother, was standing just around the corner of the building, talking to someone on his phone. Yeah, she went through with it, he was saying. Married the loser. I almost feel bad for her, you know? She's going to figure out what a mistake this was, and when she does, she's going to come crawling back. But I don't know, Mom. I don't know if we should just welcome her back with open arms after she chose him over us. I stood there, frozen, as he continued. The guy probably married her for her trust fund. Yeah, I know it's not huge, but 30,000 is 30,000 to someone like him. He's probably already planning how to spend it. My trust fund. The money my grandparents had left me, which I'd never even touched. I had no idea Marcus knew about it, let alone that he thought Daniel was after it. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing they were here. My family was here, at my wedding venue, close enough to see everything but choosing to stay hidden rather than participate in my joy. They'd come to watch me make what they considered the biggest mistake of my life. I went back inside, told Daniel I wasn't feeling well, and we cut the reception short. Our friends were understanding, they assumed I was overwhelmed by the emotion of the day. If only they knew. For 3 months after the wedding, I lived in this weird limbo. Daniel and I were blissfully happy in our little bubble, but the silence from my family was deafening. No congratulations. No wedding gift. No acknowledgement that I'd gotten married at all. It was like I'd ceased to exist. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed different after the wedding. Not in a bad way, but more confident, maybe? More sure of himself. He started making phone calls in another room, having meetings he wouldn't talk about. When I asked about job hunting, he'd just smile and say he was working on something big. I figured he was finally ready to get serious about his career. Maybe the wedding had motivated him to step up, to prove my family wrong about him. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in December. I was working on a logo design for a local coffee shop when Daniel came into our little home office, his face strange and serious. "Emma, we need to talk." My heart stopped. Those 4 words, "we need to talk," they're relationship death knells, aren't they? My mind immediately went to the worst-case scenario. He was leaving me. He'd realized my family was right, that he could do better. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sat down across from me, took my hands in his, and looked directly into my eyes. "I haven't been completely honest with you about something." Oh God. Here it comes. About my background. About my family. About money. I blinked. Of all the confessions I'd been bracing for, this wasn't one of them. "I don't understand." Daniel took a deep breath. "My full name is Daniel Eduardo Rodriguez Castellano. My father is Eduardo Castellano." He said this like it should mean something to me. When I just stared at him blankly, he continued. "Castellano Industries? The tech company?" Still nothing. I'm not great with business news. "Emma, my father founded one of the largest technology companies in the world. We develop software for everything from hospitals to space programs. The company is worth, well, Forbes estimates the family's net worth at about $3.2 billion. The words hit me like I was falling from a great height. $3.2 billion. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not unemployed, Emma. I've never been unemployed. I'm the heir to a tech empire, and I deliberately hid it from you because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have." I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. You're rich?" "Very." "How rich?" "Rich enough that I could buy your parents' restaurants without checking my bank balance first." "Rich enough that the wedding venue we rented? I actually own it." "Rich enough that when I said I was exploring my options, what I meant was I was taking time off from running the international development division of a multi-billion-dollar company to figure out if I wanted to do something else with my life." I sat back down. "Hard." "The car," I said faintly. "The clothes. The apartment. All intentional. I wanted to see who would love me when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to know what it felt like to be valued for my character instead of my bank account." "And the people at our wedding? Your friends?" "CEOs, investors, tech moguls, a few politicians." My father was there, actually. The older gentleman in the blue tie? He was so excited to meet you. He's been asking when he gets to officially welcome you to the family. My head was spinning. Why are you telling me this now? Daniel's expression hardened. Because I can't stand watching your family treat you like this anymore. Because 3 months ago, I heard your brother on the phone outside our reception, talking about how I married you for your trust fund, calling me a loser, suggesting you'd come crawling back to them when you realized your mistake. You heard that? I hear everything when it comes to you, Emma. And I'm done letting them hurt you. He pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. I hired a private investigator to look into your family's finances. Not to hurt them, just to understand them better. And what I found was interesting. The text was a summary report. As I read it, my jaw dropped. My parents' restaurants? Failing. They were hemorrhaging money and facing foreclosure on 2 of the 3 locations. Marcus's job at Goldman Sachs? He'd been laid off 4 months ago and hadn't told anyone. He and Stephanie were behind on their penthouse rent and facing eviction. My family's comfortable lifestyle was a house of cards, and it was falling down around them. They're broke, I whispered. Getting there fast, Daniel confirmed. And here's where it gets interesting, your parents took out a loan against your trust fund. As your next of kin, they were able to use it as collateral for a business loan to try to save the restaurants. If the restaurants fail, your inheritance disappears. I felt like I might throw up. They what? They gambled with your future to try to save their present. The same people who said I wasn't good enough for you because I didn't have money. The irony was suffocating. My family had rejected Daniel because they thought he was poor, when they were the ones drowning in debt. They'd criticized his financial prospects while secretly stealing my inheritance to cover their own financial failures. What do we do? I asked. Daniel smiled, and for the first time since I'd known him, it wasn't entirely kind. We give them exactly what they deserve. Chapter 5, The plan over the next 2 weeks, Daniel and I crafted what can only be described as a masterpiece of poetic justice. First, Daniel made some calls. Within 48 hours, he'd quietly purchased the debt on my parents' restaurants. He now owned their loans, which meant he had the power to foreclose, or to restructure the terms. Next, he reached out to Marcus's former employer and discovered that Marcus had been let go not for performance reasons, but for attitude issues and inability to work as part of a team. Basically, he'd been an arrogant jerk, and his colleagues had gotten tired of it. But Daniel wasn't cruel. He didn't want to destroy my family, he wanted to educate them. The goal, he explained to me over dinner at a restaurant that, I now realized, he could have bought with his pocket change, is not revenge. It's revelation. They need to understand what they've lost. They need to see who you really married. And they need to apologize, genuinely apologize, for how they've treated both of us. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Daniel would reveal his true identity, but not directly to my family. Instead, he'd orchestrate a series of events that would make them discover it themselves. He wanted them to feel the full impact of their mistake, to understand exactly how badly they'd misjudged the situation. It started with the restaurants. On a cold Thursday morning in January, my parents received a call from their loan officer. Mr. and Mrs. Chen? I have some interesting news about your debt situation. It appears your loans have been purchased by a private investor who's interested in restructuring your payment terms. My mom called me that afternoon, and for the first time in months, she sounded almost friendly. Emma, honey, we might have gotten a lucky break with the restaurants. Some investor wants to help us out. Maybe things are finally turning around. I made appropriate interested noises while Daniel grinned at me from across the room. The mysterious investor, speaking through lawyers, of course, offered my parents a deal. Instead of the crushing payments they couldn't afford, they could make smaller payments over a longer period. The catch? They had to agree to a meeting with the investor to discuss the future vision for the establishments. Desperate and grateful, they agreed immediately. Meanwhile, Marcus received a call from a headhunter. "Mr. Chen? I represent a client who's interested in your background in finance. They're launching a new venture capital division and looking for experienced analysts. The salary would be significant. Are you available for an interview?" Marcus, who'd been secretly working at a coffee shop to make ends meet while maintaining the illusion of still being a high-powered finance guy, jumped at the opportunity. The interview was scheduled for the same day as my parents' meeting with their mysterious investor. Same building. Same floor. Same conference room. I got permission to hide in an adjacent office with a view of the conference room. Daniel had security cameras installed, but I wanted to see their faces with my own eyes. At exactly 2 p.m., my parents walked into the building, nervous but hopeful. They were dressed in their best business attire, probably the first time in months they'd had reason to look professional. At 2:15, Marcus arrived, confident and cocky, probably assuming this was his ticket back to the big leagues. At 2:30, they were all sitting in the conference room, making small talk and wondering where their respective meetings were. That's when Daniel walked in. But this wasn't the Daniel they knew. This was Daniel Rodriguez Castellano, heir to a tech empire. He wore a suit that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. His hair was professionally styled. He carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd grown up in boardrooms. Behind him walked 3 people, his personal attorney, his business manager, and his father, Eduardo Castellano himself, whose face my family definitely recognized from business magazines. You could have heard a pin drop. My mother's face went white. My father's mouth actually fell open. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. "Good afternoon," Daniel said, his voice calm and professional. "Thank you all for coming. I believe we have several matters to discuss." "I don't understand," my mother stammered. "What is this? Where's the investor we're supposed to meet?" Daniel smiled, polite, distant, nothing like the warm smiles I was used to. "You're looking at him, Mrs. Chen. I'm the investor who purchased your restaurant loans." "And I," said Eduardo Castellano, stepping forward, "am the client who's been considering Mr. Chen for a position with our venture capital division." Marcus's face went through about 15 different expressions before settling on something that looked like he'd swallowed a live fish. "This is impossible," my father said. You're Emma's husband. You're unemployed." "I'm Emma's husband," Daniel agreed. "But I've never been unemployed. I'm the Executive Vice President of International Development for Castellano Industries. I have an MBA from Stanford and a Master's in Computer Science from MIT. I speak 4 languages, hold 6 patents in software development, and my personal net worth is approximately $400 million. The silence in that room was profound. Daniel continued, his voice never losing its professional tone. "For the past 2 years, you've treated your daughter's husband as if he were beneath your notice. You've made assumptions about his character, his prospects, and his worthiness based entirely on his appearance and his choice to live modestly." "We didn't know," my mother started. "You didn't ask," Eduardo interrupted, and his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. "Your daughter brought home a man who made her happy, who treated her with respect, who supported her dreams and ambitions. Instead of getting to know him, you judged him. Instead of trusting your daughter's judgment, you questioned it. Instead of celebrating her happiness, you boycotted her wedding." Marcus finally found his voice. "How are we supposed to know? You never said anything about being rich." "And that's exactly the point," Daniel said. "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have. Your sister saw my character, my values, my heart. You saw only my old clothes and my refusal to name-drop my family's company. Daniel's business manager stepped forward with a folder. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, regarding your restaurant loans, they're currently restructured at 0% interest with payments of $500 per month. This arrangement will continue indefinitely, with one condition. What condition? My father asked weakly. That you rebuild your relationship with your daughter. That you apologize for your treatment of both her and her husband. And that you prove, through your actions, that you understand the magnitude of what you've lost through your prejudice and pride. The manager turned to Marcus. Mr. Chen, the position with our venture capital division is real. The starting salary is $300,000 per year, plus benefits and profit sharing. You would be working directly under Mr. Rodriguez Castellano, learning from one of the most successful young executives in the technology sector. Marcus's eyes widened. $300,000 was more than he'd been making at Goldman Sachs. However, the manager continued, this offer is contingent on the same condition as your parents' loan restructuring. Your sister's happiness and your family's reconciliation are non-negotiable requirements. Eduardo Castellano stepped forward. I've been looking forward to meeting Emma since my son first told me about her 2 years ago. He described a woman of incredible talent, strength, and kindness. A woman who loved him when she thought he had nothing, who supported his dreams, who made him happier than I'd ever seen him. He looked at each of my family members in turn. Instead of celebrating the fact that she'd found such love, you punished her for it. You made her wedding day, what should have been the happiest day of her life, a day of heartbreak and loss. That's not what we intended, my mother said, tears starting to flow. We thought we were protecting her. From what? Daniel asked. From happiness? From love? From a man who would do anything for her? He leaned forward, and for the first time, I heard real emotion creep into his voice. Do you know what your daughter did on our wedding day? She cried. She stood in that beautiful dress, on what was supposed to be the most perfect day of her life, and she cried because the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally had chosen instead to judge her. We didn't mean, you meant exactly what you did, Daniel said firmly. You prioritized your own prejudices over your daughter's happiness. You chose your narrow definition of success over her actual joy. He stood up, signaling that the meeting was coming to an end. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to think about what we've discussed today. You're going to consider whether your pride is worth more than your relationship with Emma. And if you decide that you want to be part of our lives, you're going to start by acknowledging the incredible woman you raised and the terrible mistake you made in pushing her away. The loan restructuring and job offer stand regardless, Eduardo added. We're not cruel people, and we don't believe in punishing financial desperation. But your relationship with my daughter-in-law? That's going to require real work, real change, and real humility. As they prepared to leave, Daniel turned back one more time. Oh, and one more thing. Emma doesn't know about the loans or the job offer. As far as she knows, this meeting was purely about making you understand what you lost when you chose prejudice over love. Whether you tell her about our assistance is up to you. But I suggest you think carefully about what that choice says about your character. I watched my family sit in that conference room for another 20 minutes after Daniel and his team left. They didn't speak. They just sat there, processing what had just happened. My mother cried quietly. My father stared at his hands. Marcus looked like he was having an existential crisis. Finally, my mother broke the silence. We ruined everything, didn't we? Yeah, Marcus said, his voice hollow. We really did. That man. Emma's husband, he could have destroyed us. He could have foreclosed on the restaurants, made sure I never got another job in finance, completely ruined our lives. But he didn't, my father said quietly. He helped us. Even after everything we did to him, to Emma, he helped us. Because that's who he is, my mother whispered. And Emma saw it from the beginning. I slipped out of my hiding spot and met Daniel in the lobby. He looked emotionally drained but satisfied. How do you feel? I asked. Like I just performed surgery on a relationship, he said. Painful, but necessary. Do you think it worked? I think your family just learned something very important about judging books by their covers. Whether they act on that lesson, that's up to them. We went home to our little apartment, which, I now understood, Daniel maintained by choice rather than necessity. He could have bought us a mansion, but he knew I loved our cozy space, loved the life we'd built together. That evening, as we sat on our second-hand couch eating takeout Chinese food, I looked at the man I'd married and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it took my breath away. You know what the craziest part of all this is? I said. What's that? Even if you really had been unemployed, even if you really had been broke, even if everything my family thought about you was true, I still would have married you. I still would have chosen you over them. Daniel set down his chopsticks and pulled me close. I know. That's why I fell in love with you in the first place. And now? Now I get to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice. We were interrupted by a knock at the door. Daniel and I looked at each other. We weren't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my entire family standing in the hallway, looking sheepish and nervous and hopeful all at once. My mother was holding a bouquet of flowers. My father had a bottle of champagne. Marcus was carrying what looked like a wedding gift. Emma, my mother said, her voice shaky, we need to talk. I invited them in, though our little living room suddenly felt very crowded with 5 adults in it. Daniel offered them something to drink, playing the gracious host despite everything that had happened. My mother sat on the edge of our couch, clutching her flowers like a lifeline. Emma, we owe you the biggest apology of our lives. I waited. After months of silence, I wasn't going to make this easy for them. We were wrong, my father continued. About Daniel, about you, about everything. We let our own fears and prejudices blind us to what was right in front of us. You found a man who loves you completely, Marcus added, his voice subdued. A man who's successful and brilliant and kind. And instead of celebrating that, we punished you for it. My mother started crying again. We missed your wedding, Emma. We missed the most important day of your life because we were too proud and too stupid to see what an amazing choice you'd made. We hurt you, my father said simply. And we're sorry. I looked at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. Why now? I asked. What changed? Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. We met your husband today. The real Daniel Rodriguez Castellano. And we realized we'd been complete idiots for 2 years. He could have destroyed us, my mother said. We're in financial trouble, Emma. Bad trouble. And Daniel, he helped us. Even after everything we did, he helped us. He didn't tell you? My father asked, looking surprised. Tell me what? They explained about the loans, about the job offer, about Daniel's quiet intervention in their financial crisis. He saved our restaurants, my mother said. And he offered Marcus a job that's better than anything he's ever had. He did all of this after we treated him like he was worthless. I turned to Daniel, who was studying his hands with great interest. You didn't tell me. I wanted them to tell you, he said. I wanted their apology to be genuine, not motivated by gratitude for financial help. But why help them at all? Daniel looked up at me, and his expression was soft with love. Because they're your family. Because you love them even when they hurt you. Because I want you to have every happiness in the world, including a relationship with the people who raised you. My mother made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. See? This is what we missed. This is the man we should have been welcoming into our family from day one. Can you forgive us? My father asked. Can you give us another chance to be the family you deserve? I looked around the room at these people who'd hurt me so deeply, who'd missed my wedding, who'd made me feel like I had to choose between love and family. But I also saw genuine remorse. Real understanding of what they'd done wrong. And a willingness to change. I can forgive you, I said finally. But things can't just go back to the way they were before. You're going to have to prove that you've actually learned something from this. We'll do whatever it takes, Marcus said immediately. Good. Because Daniel and I are a package deal. You don't get to love me while merely tolerating him. You don't get to make snide comments about his choices or his background or his family. You don't get to treat him like he's not good enough. Never again, my mother promised. And if we decide to have kids someday, they're going to know their father as the incredible man he is, not as someone you settled for accepting. Of course, my father said. I looked at Daniel again. He was smiling now, the real smile I'd fallen in love with. Okay, I said. We can try again. The relief in the room was palpable. My mother burst into fresh tears, but happy ones this time. My father stood up and, for the first time since I'd brought Daniel home, extended his hand to my husband. Daniel, he said formally, I'm honored to welcome you to our family. Officially this time. Daniel shook his hand. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That means everything to Emma, which means everything to me. Marcus approached next, looking more humble than I'd ever seen him. I owe you a separate apology, he said to Daniel. The things I said about you, the assumptions I made, there's no excuse for that. We all make mistakes, Daniel replied graciously. The measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes, it's whether they learn from them. 6 months later, we had a second wedding reception. Not because we needed to get married again, but because we wanted to celebrate our marriage with the people who mattered to us. This time, both sides of the venue were full. My parents closed their restaurants for the evening so all their employees could attend. Marcus brought Stephanie, who turned out to be lovely once she wasn't following his lead and snubbing me. My aunts and uncles and cousins all came, many of them embarrassed about their previous behavior but eager to make amends. Daniel's side was filled with his real friends and family, tech moguls and artists, executives and free spirits, all the fascinating people who'd been part of his life all along. Eduardo Castellano gave a speech about how proud he was to officially welcome me to the family. He talked about how Daniel had always been selective about the people he let into his inner circle, and how they'd all known I was special from the moment Daniel started talking about me. My father gave a speech too, about second chances and the importance of seeing people for who they really are rather than who we think they should be. But the best moment came when my mother pulled me aside during the reception. Emma, I need you to know something. What's that, Mom? Even if Daniel really had been unemployed, even if he really had been struggling financially, I should have supported your choice. Because you're my daughter, and your happiness should have been the only thing that mattered to me. Mom, no, let me finish. I've spent the last 6 months getting to know your husband, and he's an extraordinary man. But you know what? You would have been just as right to marry him if he'd been a struggling artist or a coffee shop employee or anything else. Because love is what matters. Character is what matters. And you've always had excellent judgment about both. I hugged her tight, feeling like we were finally, truly healing. Later that evening, as Daniel and I danced to the same song we danced to at our first reception, I reflected on everything that had happened. Do you regret it? I asked him. Hiding who you were for so long? Not for a second, he said. It gave me you. It gave me a love that I know is real, not based on what I can provide but on who I am. And the reveal? The dramatic confrontation with my family? Daniel grinned. That was deeply satisfying, I have to admit. Though I'm glad it ended with reconciliation rather than permanent estrangement. My family loves you now. Your family respects me now. Love will come with time, and that's okay. The important thing is that they love you, and they're finally showing it in the right way. As we swayed together, surrounded by everyone we cared about, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The heartbreak of my family's rejection. The joy of discovering Daniel's true identity. The satisfaction of watching them realize their mistake. The healing that had followed. But mostly, I thought about love. Real love. The kind that sees past surfaces to souls, that chooses connection over convention, that builds bridges instead of walls. You know what the best part of this whole story is? I said to Daniel. What's that? I would have chosen you anyway. Rich or poor, famous or unknown, heir to a tech empire or coffee shop employee. I would have chosen you every single time. I know, he said, spinning me around as the music swelled. That's why you got to keep me. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones who see us the least clearly. They get so caught up in their own fears and expectations that they miss what's right in front of them, genuine love, authentic connection, real happiness. But here's the beautiful thing about true love, it doesn't need anyone else's approval to be real. Emma and Daniel's love was just as valid when her family rejected it as it was when they finally accepted it. The validation was nice, sure. The reconciliation was healing. But the love? The love was perfect from day one. If this story gave you all the feels, and I mean all the feels, smash that like button and let me know in the comments, have you ever been completely wrong about someone's first impression? Or have you had your family doubt a relationship that turned out to be amazing? And hey, if you love stories about people getting exactly what they deserve, both the good and the bad, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because I've got so many more incredible tales of justice, karma, and love conquering all. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.